Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be with you all. We're gathered here today for a humanitarian crisis and a humanitarian cause. Most of you and many of us who are here today are here because we believe in the universal principle of justice. It's a type of justice that applies across all lines of race, religion, ethnicity, background, gender, age. As human beings, we care about any cause for justice for any people, any brothers, any sisters all around the world. And the reality is, we are here today because one of these causes has been forgotten. One of these causes has been overlooked. We are here in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in humanity. Our brothers and sisters in East Turkestan, facing one of the most severe oppressions of our time, facing one of the most severe genocides of our time. We look back at history and we study all types of genocides and oppressions and concentration camps. And we wonder, how were people silent? How were people not responding to the clear injustices around them? And the reality is, we are here because we will not be silent. The reality is, we are here because we will not be silent. When we look at the injustices happening in East Turkestan, when we look at the 1 million to 3 million who have been gathered up in concentration camps, when we hear about the organ harvesting, when we hear about the families and the wives and the mothers who tell us that at 9 months pregnant they were forced to abort their children, how can we be silent? How can we be silent when we see our brothers and sisters facing all types of persecution at the highest levels? When we see ethnic cleansing, how can we be silent? This is a genocide that does not allow anyone with any human heart, any semblance of sympathy, to remain silent. When we hear the quote from Martin Luther King, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, the reality is that you cannot really have justice and peace if people are being silent. We cannot remain silent, and we will continue to address every type of injustice that we see around us. Silence in the face of injustice is injustice. Silence in the face of oppression is oppression. Silence in the face of injustice is injustice. I want you to finish the sentence. Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
Some of you might be aware that here at Harvard University, the faculty of Harvard Law were asked to select 3 quotes or 3 expressions of justice throughout history that would be very comprehensive and holistic. And one of the 3 selections was a verse from the final testament, final revelation, the Noble Quran. In chapter 4, verse 135, the translation which is, O you who believe, stand as witnesses firmly for justice, even if it is against yourselves, or your parents, or your families, or your relatives. As Muslims and as human beings, we apply the principle of justice consistently. It does not matter who's on the other side. We have to be consistent in advocating for every cause. We're looking around us today, and we're seeing problems locally and we're seeing problems globally. Just today and yesterday we saw the problems happening in Palestine. We're seeing problems here in the United States. We're seeing problems in East Turkestan, problems in Yemen, problems in Burma. And people are remaining silent. How is it that when one life, one Caucasian life in a first world country is taken unjustifiably, we throw a fit and we spread virally through social media the cause that is unjust or unjust? We make it as it should be a problem. How is it that one life is more significant than others? We have to be consistent. You don't have 100 or 1,000 lives at stake here. These are millions of lives. This is ethnic cleansing at the highest levels. We cannot remain silent. Silence in the face of injustice is injustice. Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
When we think of the reality of the situation today, all we can do is to address the situations to our best capacity. Raise awareness as much as you can. When people say that there's no peace without justice, they're not advocating for violence. When people say no justice, no peace, they're not advocating for violence, and we are not advocating for violence. They are saying that justice is a condition for peace. Justice is a prerequisite for peace. The reality is, when people are suffering anywhere around the world, across all lines from all backgrounds of life, we will never be able to live in peace while they are dealing with injustice. You cannot and you should not sleep in peace knowing that your brother and your sisters all around the world are dying at the moment. It does not require anything but a little bit of humanity. A little bit of humanity to have sympathy for the people around us, of all colors, of all races, of all ethnicities, consistently across the world. We will not remain silent, because silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
All we can do is to raise awareness at the highest magnitude. Spread awareness wherever you can. The same way you are creative on social media with whatever you want to do of leisure and entertainment. Use the blessings that you have to fulfill this responsibility. You have people who say social media is an opportunity. No, social media is not just an opportunity. It is a responsibility. And if you're using your social media and you're not fulfilling your responsibility, then you are not using it to its fullest capacity. When we hear people say, I'm uncomfortable talking about this, how dare you say you're uncomfortable when they are uncomfortable dying, when they are uncomfortable in the concentration camps? How can you say you feel ashamed or you're shy to speak the truth? Because the people of injustice are not shy to do what they're doing. They're not ashamed with their injustice. We cannot remain silent, and we will not remain silent. And when these messages all across the country and across the world, when these messages spread, and I hope and pray they will continue to spread, we are asking people all across the world to basically be consistent with the universal principle of justice. Be consistent with advocating for justice all across the world for all people. Consistently, constantly, without any shame, without any fear. We cannot be silent, and we will not be silent. And if these messages, and I hope they do, reach some of our political leaders, then we ask them to also raise the bar. We ask them to use their positions and their platforms in order to take action. Because this is not something theoretical, this is happening right now. People are suffering right now, and we will not remain silent. Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
Silence in the face of injustice is
injustice.
I ask Allah to reward all of us, and I ask God to guide our hearts to be people of justice and people of truth. Thank you for coming out. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.